Deep Dive. Today we're diving headfirst into a book you shared with us, What a Difference a Day Makes by George McGill.
Mm-hmm.
Our aim, really, is to pull out those key moments, the insights that really shaped his life, sort of give you a direct line to understanding his journey.
Yeah, and maybe spark some thoughts about your own, right?
Exactly.
This book, it's structured around 10 specific days, pivotal days in George McGill's life.
Right.
And he presents them as, like, strategically placed by a higher power to change his path. It's a pretty fascinating idea.
It really is.
So we're going to explore a few of these days, see how these seemingly small events, led to really big shifts.
Like finding those key turning points on a map.
Exactly. Identifying those moments.
And you, listening, you appreciate getting to the heart of things quickly, understanding what really counts.
Right, getting the aha moments.
So that's what this deep dive is for, focusing on the core of McGill's experiences, those transformative moments, and thinking about, what they might mean more broadly.
Okay, so where do we start?
Let's start with the first day we're looking at. He calls it 2 trips.
Right, 2 trips. The first trip. It sounds pretty ordinary, actually. A childhood fishing trip.
Yeah, Blue Ridge Lake. With his dad, his brothers.
He talks about that excitement, hooking a bass, finally.
The big one.
Only to lose it.
Yeah.
A bit of a bummer for a kid, but, typical fishing story almost.
But then the day takes a really serious turn.
It does. Later, back home, he gets hit with this terrible headache.
Just suddenly.
Suddenly. He lies down, and then he's just unresponsive, out cold.
And there's that detail about his aunt.
Oh, yeah, the grass and milk thing. It's such an unusual, almost frantic request.
It really tells you how serious they thought it was. Very alarming.
Definitely signals the gravity. So then it's this frantic rush.
To the local doctor first.
Who's baffled, basically. Can't figure it out.
Understandably.
So he sends them to Georgia Baptist Hospital in Atlanta. That's a long drive back then.
2.5 hours.
Yeah. And McGill, he has zero memory of this trip. None at all.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up. Where?
On a gurney. In a hospital corridor. He sees the flashing lights.
Must have been terrifying, disorienting.
Totally. And he sees his mom and his aunt right there, praying. Really intensely praying beside him.
Yeah.
Then he gets put in isolation. They need to run tests. But it's what happened before he woke up. That's the core of this first story.
The second trip.
Exactly. He talks about being, and these are his words, dead for 5 hours.
5 hours.
Yeah. And he doesn't describe, like, pearly gates or anything. It's more about a state of being.
Which was?
Total peace. Complete peace. And the sensation of floating gently towards a bright light.
Floating towards light. Okay.
And he really emphasizes how instant this peace was. It wasn't gradual, boom, instant calm.
No fading anxiety, just peace.
Right. And he uses an analogy to try and explain it.
The paratrooper one.
Yeah, the paratrooper.
Mm-hmm.
He says it's like that moment, that fraction of a second after you jump from the plane.
Before the chute opens.
Exactly. That sudden silence where all the fear just vanishes, instantly gone.
That's a really powerful image. That contrast, chaos to absolute calm.
It really is. It helps you grasp that it wasn't just feeling better, it was a completely different state. Total serenity.
Right. Immersive.
Mm-hmm. And from this, he draws this really fundamental conclusion about fear.
That fear is what? The absence of knowledge.
Exactly. Fear is the absence of knowledge.
Yeah.
He says in that state, he just knew everything. All the answers were there.
And knowing everything means no room for fear.
No fear, just that total peace. And this experience, he says, just wiped out his fear of death. Completely.
It wasn't just an idea he adopted, it was something he felt, he experienced directly.
Right. Visceral. It fundamentally changed his whole perspective on life, on death. That kind of experience sticks with you,
Definitely. So he sees this whole thing as his personal testimony.
Yeah, proof for him of the peace that's waiting. It cemented his faith in God, in the soul being eternal.
And he believes his mother's prayers were key.
He does. He credits her prayers with bringing him back.
And then he briefly touches on being born again.
Right. Just briefly here. He links it to overcoming the fear of hell, basically. Ensuring that peace.
Like a ticket to heaven, as he puts it.
Yeah, gaining that essential knowledge, you could say, to dispel the ultimate fear.
So the upshot of this whole day, these 2 trips, is he's no longer afraid to die.
Not at all. He even says he kind of looks forward to experiencing that peace again.
That's a massive shift in outlook, all from that one day as a kid.
Incredible, isn't it?
Okay, let's shift gears. Let's look at another day. This one seems even more mundane at first glance. Typing class.
Right. So now he's a senior in high school.
Okay.
And just kind of on a whim, really.
Mhm.
Him and some friends decide to take typing.
Just like that. No big reason.
Nope. Seems totally spontaneous. The teacher, Mrs. Smith, she was well-liked. Maybe that was part of it. But no grand career plan.
Just seemed like an easy class, maybe.
Probably. You know how it is in high school. But then, surprise, he's actually good at it.
Really. Finds a hidden talent.
Yeah, a natural aptitude. Picks it up really fast, starts banging out those standard phrases.
He mentions a funny story about a classmate, too.
Oh, Johnny Pickett. Yeah, apparently this kid would get super frustrated during the speed drills.
Slamming the typewriter.
Totally. Pounding away. You can just picture it, right? Teenage angst and clackety keys.
Ah, definitely. Brings that classroom scene to life.
And there's another thread here, too. His mom worked at Levi Strauss.
Okay. As a supervisor.
Right. She encourages him to get a summer job there between junior and senior year.
Makes sense.
And again, unexpectedly, he finds he's really good at operating the sewing machines.
Another hidden skill, like the typing.
Exactly. Some kind of manual dexterity he didn't know he had.
Fascinating how those things pop up, isn't it?
That's-
These skills you don't expect.
Totally. So later in senior year, Mrs. Smith, the typing teacher, she notices how fast he is.
How fast are we talking?
Close to 100 words per minute, which is seriously fast.
Wow. Yeah, that's impressive.
So she pushes him to enter the state typing contest.
And he's like, yeah, let's do it.
Nope. He turns it down flat. Says he thought it was sissy.
Oh, classic teenager. Can't be seen doing something uncool.
Exactly. It just shows how your perspective then can totally blind you to what might be important later, right?
Definitely. So at the time, this typing class, it just seemed insignificant.
Completely. An easy grade, hang out with friends, boring even.
Neither him nor Mrs. Smith could have guessed.
Not in a million years. They couldn't predict how absolutely crucial this skill would become.
And this is where the story jumps. Dramatically.
Yeah. Fast forward 2.5 years, he's in Vietnam.
Okay. Big leap.
And he makes this point really strongly. That random decision, taking typing class,
Yeah.
it ends up having these huge life or death consequences thousands of miles away.
Wow. Okay, so set the scene in Vietnam.
He's with the 173rd Airborne, and his first 6 months, intense combat, constant danger.
Scary stuff.
He talks about the fear being constant and really leaning on his faith to get through it.
Understandable.
So this really grounds you before you hear how typing, of all things, plays a role.
Okay, so how does it connect?
There's this specific, really harrowing moment, a big battle called the Slopes.
The slopes, okay.
He's fighting, and there's a South Vietnamese soldier right next to him.
Yeah.
And the soldier gets killed, machine gun fire.
Oh, man.
And McGill realizes with this awful clarity, if that soldier hadn't moved just then, the bullet was meant for him.
Chilling. That close.
He sees it as God's intervention, a direct sign. Makes you really feel the thin line between life and death there.
Absolutely. So after this battle,
He gets some R&R, rest and recuperation, then he heads back to headquarters.
Okay.
And this is it. This is where typing class comes back into play. He finds Lieutenant Owens.
he's officer.
Right. And Owens is struggling. He's trying to type up award citations for the soldiers on this old typewriter.
Important paperwork, but tedious.
And probably slow going if you're not a typist.
So McGill sees this,
And he just offers, hey, let me do that.
and Owens is probably like, you, a combat soldier, you can type.
Exactly. Completely surprised. Blown away, probably.
I bet.
And Owens' immediate reaction is just priceless. He says, you've spent your last day in the field.
Just like that. Pulled him out.
Just like that. A huge instant shift in McGill's duties and his risk level.
Wow. So the typing skill literally got him off the front line.
Literally. And the timing. This
Mhm.
is the staggering part.
What happened?
3 days later, just 3 days after he starts typing at HQ, his old company gets hit. Hard.
Oh, no.
They were nearly wiped out. A devastating attack.
So if he hadn't taken typing,
He would have been there. He's absolutely convinced he would have been killed.
if Mrs. Smith hadn't walked out of the office that day, if he hadn't just decided to sign up with his friends,
All those tiny, seemingly random choices, they added up to saving his life.
it's an incredible story. Really hammers home that theme, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You only see the significance looking back.
Exactly. That butterfly effect idea. You just never know.
Okay, wow. Let's move on. There's another key encounter, another person who changes things. Winfred Kerbo,
Right. So this is after Vietnam. McGill's back home working construction for a bit.
getting back to civilian life.
Yeah. And he gets involved with his church, Jonesboro First Baptist,
Okay.
starts teaching Sunday school. And guess who's in his class?
Let me guess. Someone connected to Chick-fil-A.
You got it. Dan and Bubba Cathy, Truett Cathy's sons.
Before Chick-fil-A was huge, though.
Exactly. It wasn't the giant chain it is now. Just starting out, really. But these connections matter.
So Truett Cathy notices McGill.
He does. He's impressed by him, maybe sees his potential, his character.
And offers him a job.
A big opportunity, yeah, to become an owner-operator of a Chick-fil-A.
Wow. That's huge.
Cathy was expanding, looking for good people he could trust. McGill seemed like a good fit.
So McGill jumps at it.
Well, he agrees to check it out. Truett suggests he visit an existing store first.
Let's see how it runs. Makes sense.
Yeah, a successful one at South DeKalb Mall. And the operator there, Winford Curbo. Ah, so this is the meeting.
This is the day. But McGill almost didn't go through with it.
Why not?
He sees the employees in the paper hats and the bow ties.
Right, the classic Chick-fil-A uniform back then.
And he has this moment of, well, pride maybe. He's a combat vet, you know. Feels a bit ridiculous.
That internal conflict.
Yeah.
Caste identity versus this new, maybe slightly goofy opportunity.
Exactly. It's very relatable.
Yeah.
But he'd promised Truett he'd look into it.
So he goes in.
Goes into the employee area, meets Winford Curbo.
And what's Curbo like?
Curbo knows who he is right away. He's older, mid to late 50s maybe.
Yeah.
And he's got this great personality.
From experience.
Yeah. Apparently he'd worked for years in the dining department for the railroad. So good with people. Customer service background.
Okay. So Curbo gives him the hard sell.
Not really. It's more subtle.
Yeah.
He has McGill just watch the store first. It's busy.
Okay. Just observe.
And he tells him, listen for the sound of the cash register drawer opening. The ding.
Rebellic.
Ding.
Right. And he says, every time you hear that bell, I just made another dime.
Huh. That's a clever way to frame it. Very
Right.
tangible. Motivating.
Totally. And then to really drive it home, Curbo shows him the numbers.
The profit and loss statement.
Yep. Shows him his P&L from the last month. Lets the potential profit speak for itself.
And suddenly those paper hats and bow ties look a lot better.
Considerably more appealing, yeah. It puts the initial hesitation into perspective. Practical rewards versus, vanity.
So McGill takes the opportunity.
He does. And he becomes really successful. Opens his own store at Perimeter Mall.
And does well.
Extremely well. He even comes up with his own ideas to speed things up, make it more efficient, break sales records.
Wow, good for him.
Yeah, and it becomes a family thing, too. He eventually helps his parents, his brother, become Chick-fil-A operators as well.
That's fantastic. A real success story stemming from that meeting.
Absolutely. The Chick-fil-A part was huge, no doubt. But McGill says the real difference that day made
Wasn't just the business.
it was meeting Winford Curbo himself, that relationship.
Okay, how so? What else happened?
Well, during the training period, Curbo invites him to play golf.
Golf. McGill wasn't a golfer.
Nope. He actually had the same reaction as with typing, thought it was kind of sissy.
Huh. History repeating itself.
A little bit, yeah. But Curbo invites him, so he reluctantly agrees, gives it a shot.
Another seemingly small invitation.
Exactly. And just like that, huge consequences.
They liked it.
Liked it. He got instantly addicted. His words. Played his first round at Browns Mill Golf Course.
Hooked immediately.
Totally hooked. Curbo becomes his regular golf buddy, teaches him the game.
And this becomes a big deal for McGill.
Massive. He says meeting Curbo and getting into golf outside of his relationship with God, that had the single biggest impact on his life.
Wow. More than Chick-fil-A even.
That's what he implies, because this passion for golf eventually leads him to start his own company.
Kiss Golf.
Kiss Golf, yeah. Which did incredibly well. Over $100 million in sales, the book says.
Incredible.
Yeah.
All stemming from that one casual golf invitation from Winford Curbo.
Amazing, isn't it? And for McGill, golf became more than just a business or a hobby.
How so?
He saw it as a way for families to connect, especially mothers and kids, he mentions, a way to communicate, spend time together.
So it had a deeper meaning for him, too.
Definitely. And reflecting on Curbo, he says, Winford wasn't some pro golfer.
Just loved the game.
Just loved it and shared that love. And that simple act changed McGill's entire life path.
And McGill hopes his legacy is similar.
Yeah, he draws that parallel. Hopes he introduces people to Jesus, the way Curbo introduced him to golf. It's about that positive influence, right? The unexpected ways we shape each other's lives.
Profound stuff. Mentorship, chance encounters.
Yeah.
They really matter.
They really do. Okay, should we move to the next really pivotal, deeply personal day?
Let's do it. The one titled Born Again.
Right. So McGill reflects back on Vietnam again here.
How it changed him.
Fundamentally, he talks about going from feeling, young and invincible.
Like most young soldiers probably feel initially.
Right. To really understanding his own vulnerability, how much he needed to rely on God just to survive day to day.
That kind of experience has to leave a mark, facing your own mortality like that.
Definitely. It laid the foundation, he says, for a deep spiritual need later on.
So after Vietnam, things weren't smooth sailing.
Not immediately. He describes a period of inner turmoil, anger, fights, still processing it all, probably.
Yeah, that makes sense. Post-traumatic stress, even if they didn't call it that as much then.
Exactly. And so by age 31, he feels this incredibly strong need, a hunger, really.
To know for sure.
To know with absolute certainty if he was born again. It wasn't just intellectual curiosity, it was deep.
Okay. So how does this unfold? It involves the military again.
Yeah, kind of unexpectedly, he's stationed at Fort Bragg at this point.
In North Carolina.
Right. But he wants to be closer to his parents in Atlanta, so he tries to get a transfer to Fort McPherson.
Seems like a long shot, maybe. Getting a specific transfer like that.
Usually, yeah. But somehow, he gets an audience with the top guy, the command sergeant major, for the whole Third Army.
Wow. How did that happen?
Well, turns out, this sergeant major, it's Sergeant Top.
Sergeant Top. Wait, from Vietnam.
The very same.
Yeah.
His former first sergeant, a guy he really respected.
No way. What are the odds?
Crazy, right? And that connection, that history, makes all the difference.
So Top helps him out.
He does. Gets McGill and 4 of his buddies transferred to the EMP company at Fort McPherson.
EMP.
What's that?
Emergency Management Police, I think. But their assignment? Totally unexpected.
Not what they thought they'd be doing.
Definitely not. They get put in charge of the stockade, the military jail.
Whoa. From combat vets to jail guards.
Pretty much. And McGill and his team, fresh from Vietnam, not easily intimidated.
Probably didn't take any nonsense from the prisoners.
Let's just say they established control quickly, using unconventional methods. The book implies a certain level of implied force based on their combat readiness.
Okay. Sounds like they weren't messing around. Not at all. They got the job done, restored order, but their methods ruffled some feathers.
Congressional complaints. Uh-oh.
Yeah. So mission accomplished, but they get reassigned pretty quickly to white hat duty, regular MPs.
So that whole stockade episode, it shows how different they were after Vietnam.
I think so. McGill reflects on that, how combat changed him, made him more protective, maybe quicker to anger sometimes.
She gives an example.
Yeah, about seeing some guys harassing a woman and him stepping in, confronting them pretty forcefully. That protective instinct, maybe a shorter fuse too.
The long shadow of war.
Exactly. So fast forward again, it's now 10 years after Vietnam.
Okay.
And McGill is just tired, worn out, emotionally, physically exhausted from years of conflict inside and out.
That sets the stage for something big.
It does. He's staying at his parents' place. It's night. He's in complete darkness.
Which was a habit from Vietnam.
Yeah, darkness meant safety there. So in the dark, he prays. Really sincerely. He needs to know, am I born again? Do I belong to you?
A moment of real seeking.
Absolutely. And then
something
happens. Something physical.
What does he describe?
Like a bolt of lightning going right through him. So powerful it physically throws him out of the bed.
Whoa. That's intense. Not just a feeling, but a physical event.
Extremely intense, visceral.
So he's on the floor. What's going through his mind?
Just one thought, apparently. Overwhelmingly clear. Okay, I know, and thank you.
Simple, but profound.
Profound, instant knowing, deep gratitude. And that was it.
That experience gave him absolute certainty.
Absolute, unwavering certainty about God, about being born again. No doubts left.
And that certainty stuck.
Completely. He says, he's messed up since then, needed forgiveness like anyone, but he knows he can't be reborn. That experience was foundational, irreversible for him.
A total transformation.
Yeah, he talks about the change from being, his words, mean and full of temper to feeling love, having peace.
And he calls this the most important day.
The most important day of his life. It gave him peace, purpose, and a kind of inner power.
He uses that GPS analogy here too, right?
Yeah, the Holy Spirit as his GPS, God's purpose system, guiding his life now.
That makes sense. A new direction finder.
Exactly. And crucially, like the childhood experience, this one also completely removes his fear of death.
That seems to be a recurring theme. Peace and fearlessness.
Definitely.
Yeah.
This spiritual awakening cemented that inner security for him. It really shaped everything that came after.
Okay, so that leads us to another significant day, another turning point. the one called Go to Work for Me.
Right. So now we jump forward quite a bit, about 28 years after that born-again experience.
Wow, long time.
Yeah. He's driving up in North Georgia, and he's thinking about a business deal, an opportunity in Nashville.
Okay, weighing his options.
Exactly. And he's literally at a crossroads, a junction in the road, stopping, thinking.
And then?
He hears a voice, clear as day, audible. Not in his head, he says, but actually hearing it.
Saying what?
Why don't you go to work for me?
Whoa, just like that.
Yeah.
A direct question.
Direct, unmistakable, and completely unexpected.
What's his reaction? He must have been stunned.
He was. And his response is actually kind of funny, very human.
What did he say?
He says he replied out loud, "You know how expensive I am." And then he started laughing.
Huh. That's pretty good. Bit of humor even then.
Yeah, a very down-to-earth reaction to something extraordinary. But then, obviously, he thinks about what it means.
Go to work for me. What does that mean? So many possibilities.
Exactly. It's profound. He really reflects on it, prays about it.
And what does he come to understand it as?
As a clear calling, a mandate, really, to share the message of Jesus, the sacrifice, the redemption story.
So a shift away from business as his main focus.
A definite shift towards a primarily spiritual mission. That becomes his main work now.
And he gives this mission a name.
He does. M.A.S.H, Motivated Armies Seeking Heaven.
M.A.S.H.
Okay.
And the goal is pretty straightforward. Help people get to heaven. He talks about partnership, about life being like a war zone between good and evil and needing to work together.
So it's about recruiting people for God's side. That's how he frames it. He repeats again, he has no fear of death because of his experiences.
Right.
So now his purpose is to be a recruiter for God's kingdom. That's his new job title, essentially.
And part of that is standing firm on his beliefs.
Yeah, he emphasizes standing up for what he sees as biblical truth. This calling just solidified his commitment, made it unwavering.
So from that day, that moment at the crossroads.
His mission was set.
Yeah.
Help as many people as possible be born again. That became the driving force for the rest of his life, a defining moment for sure.
Okay, wow. We've covered a lot of ground, a lot of significant days.
We really have. It's quite a journey.
So maybe let's try and wrap up the key takeaways here as we bring this deep dive to a close.
Sure. We saw that childhood brush with death, right? Leading to that unexpected, profound peace.
Yeah, and the typing class, that random choice.
Becoming a literal lifeline in Vietnam. Amazing.
Then meeting Winfred Kerbo.
Yeah. Opening doors to Chick-fil-A, sure, but more importantly,
igniting that passion for golf, which led to another whole career path.
Exactly. And then the deeply personal born-again experience.
Bringing that certainty, that peace and purpose he was searching for.
And finally, that direct, audible calling, go to work for me. Setting his ultimate mission.
It's a powerful sequence of events when you lay them out like that.
It really is. And for you, the learner listening in, hopefully this gives you that condensed insight into these moments, how they rippled outwards.
Yeah, his stories, they really highlight how these seemingly small things, choices, encounters,
They can just dramatically change everything, your whole life's path.
and the role of unexpected skills like typing or those deep spiritual experiences.
They all weave together to make his unique story.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening to sort of chew on.
Yeah.
Think about your own life. Are there moments looking back that seemed insignificant at the time?
Random choices, chance meetings.
Yeah. That maybe, just maybe, held some unforeseen importance.
Or subtly changed your direction.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? It does. And maybe thinking about what a deeper purpose might look like in your own journey, whatever shape that takes for you.
McGill's story definitely invites that kind of reflection. The power of a single day, the potential for unexpected turns, for meaning.
Exactly. It's about the potential within our own stories, too.
Well, thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
This or reading it has got any fear of death, please listen to this, because what I'm about to say to you absolutely stopped my fear of death. And that happened to me as a boy. Hear what I said. It stopped my fear of death. It's as vivid to me right now as it was then. Now that makes a difference, because I can't tell you all the surroundings, but the event is just as vivid right now as it was then. In my life, there's only 10 days that really made a difference. And we're going to talk about them 10 days, and today we're going to talk about the first of those 10 days. Now, when this day happened, I was just a boy. I'm guessing 10 or 11, 12 years old, somewhere in there. And but we're going to talk about that because that day made such an influence on my entire life. And here I am at 79 years old, going to try to think back to that day. Just a family of 5, 3 boys, mom, dad, poor, didn't have much money, had a lot of love. And this day, a couple of things happened in that morning that really shocked me, because when we got up, Dad said, "I'm going to take you boys fishing." I'd never been fishing with my dad. That was yeah, let's go do this. And I don't know how Frank and Steve felt about that, but it was exciting that Dad was taking us fishing. So he loaded us in a car with all the gear, and we go out to Blue Ridge Lake up on Green Creek. Anybody lives and we fished, and sometime in the middle of that morning, we was catching brim and that kind of stuff. But I hooked a 3 or 4 pound bass. Oh my goodness, it was so exciting. And I fought that fish for a few minutes, but it got tangled around one of the limbs in a bush and got off. Very disappointing. But anyway, that's what I remember about the morning. But then we go back home, and my aunt was going to babysit us that day. Mom and Dad worked, but when I got home and I walked through the door, I just had a busting headache. I mean, it's terrible, and I'd never had a headache. And so I tell my Aunt Wanda I'm going to lay down, and I went and laid down in my bed in the bedroom, and that is the last thing I remember was laying down. Now, the story comes behind that she came in to check on me and couldn't rouse me. She asked me if she could get something for me. Now, this is what she told me later. And I said, "Yes, I would like for you to bring me some grass and milk." And that kind of blew her away, because it was one of them, "What'd you say?" Yeah, grass and milk. So she backed out of there and called my mom, who was at work, and said, "You better come see about George." So she did. And she come in the house and couldn't rouse me, couldn't get me awake, couldn't do anything, and nope, wasn't conscious of anything. So they got me in a car, and I can't answer how they did that, but whether it was carrying me or whatever, because I was a pretty good-sized boy then. And they took me uptown to a local doctor there, Dr. Burns. And Mom says that he told her, says, "Jeanette, I hadn't got a clue. I don't know what to do with this. I've done everything in the world I know to do to get him just to wake up." He wouldn't do it. And so he said, "I'm calling Georgia Baptist Hospital, and I want y'all to take him there and let them do some work on him, see if they can figure out what it is." So Mom and Dad and my uncle and aunt loaded me in my uncle's station wagon, laid me in the back, and they got in the car. And we was about to take the 2.5-hour drive to Atlanta. So here goes that trip. And when we get into Atlanta, I go into the hospital, and I wake up going down the corridor of that hospital laying on a gurney.